The galaxy had been at peace for 3,000 years. The galactic conquered, a union of hundreds of alien species, kept order. Across the stars, they traded with each other. They shared knowledge. They settled disputes with words instead of weapons. It was a good system built on trust and cooperation. But there was one rule that everyone followed without question. Some worlds were too dangerous to visit. Some species were too deadly to contact. These places were marked on every star map with a simple warning: do not approach. Earth was one of these worlds. The scientists who studied Earth from a safe distance called it a Category 7 death world. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was filled with a corrosive gas called oxygen. The weather was violent and unpredictable. Massive storms, floods, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions were common. The creatures that lived there were equally terrifying. Predators with sharp teeth hunted in packs. Diseases spread through the air and water. Even the plants could kill. And then there were the humans. The conquered had observed humanity for centuries. They watched these strange beings survive conditions that would kill most species in minutes. Humans breathed poison. They drank a universal solvent. They exposed their skin to radiation from their own sun for pleasure. They kept predators as pets. They ate foods that were toxic to almost every other known life form. The conquered decided unanimously that humanity must never be contacted. The risk was too great. Let them stay on their deadly world, ignorant of the galaxy around them. Commander Zyos of the Veloxy species had agreed with this decision. His entire life, the Veloxy were a peaceful people. Their bodies were made of living crystal, beautiful and fragile. They valued art, music, and diplomacy above all else. Violence was foreign to their nature. The idea of visiting a death world filled Zythos with deep fear, but the universe did not care about his fears. Zythos commanded the diplomatic vessel, Eternal Harmony. His mission was simple: deliver a trade agreement to the Marathi home world and return home. The route was safe. The journey was routine. Nothing was supposed to go wrong. The Krath appeared without warning. The Kraraft were slavers. They captured members of weaker species and sold them across the galaxy's black markets. The conquered had tried to stop them for centuries, but the Krath were strong and cruel. They struck from the shadows and disappeared. Before anyone could respond, 3 Krath warships surrounded the Eternal Harmony. Their weapons tore through the diplomatic vessel's thin hull like claws. Through paper, Zythos watched in horror as his crew died around him. The ship systems failed one by one. Life support began to collapse. The craft commander appeared on the viewscreen. His face was covered in scales and his eyes were cold and hungry. Surrender your crew, the craft said. You will serve the Dominion now. Zythos looked at his dying ship. He looked at his wounded crew. He knew that surrender meant a life of slavery and suffering. Death would be better, but there had to be another option. There had to be some way out. His eyes fell on the emergency beacon. Every ship in the conquered carried one. It sent a distress signal across all frequencies, calling for help from anyone who might hear. But out here in the Forbidden Sector, Earth, who would answer? The nearest conquered outpost was days away. Help would never arrive in time unless someone closer was listening. Zythos made his decision. He activated the beacon. The signal shot out into space, traveling at the speed of light. It passed through the void, growing weaker with distance. Most of it would fade into nothing. But a small part of it, a tiny whisper. The darkness reached a blue and green world that the galaxy feared. It reached Earth, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The United Earth Space Command had built its most advanced listening station. Hundreds of technicians worked around the clock, monitoring the skies for any sign of extraterrestrial activity. Humanity had long suspected they were not alone. They had sent probes into deep space. They had built radio telescopes that could hear signals from distant stars. They had waited and watched and wondered. Lieutenant Commander Grace Palmer was on duty when the signal arrived. She was young, barely 30 years old, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had spent her entire career preparing for a moment like this. At first, she thought it was a mistake. The signal was weak and broken, damaged by its journey through space, but as she analyzed the data, her heart began to race. The signal was structured. It had patterns that no natural phenomenon could create. It was a message. Someone out there was asking for help. Grace called her commanding officer, Admiral Kevin Briggs. The admiral was an old soldier, gay-haired and steady. He had seen many strange things in his long career, but nothing had prepared him for this. Are you certain? He asked, staring at the data on the screen. Yes, sir, Grace replied. It's a distress call. Someone is in trouble and they're not far from here. Briggs was silent. For a long moment, humanity had dreamed of meeting aliens for centuries. They had imagined what first contact might look like. Would it be peaceful? Would it be hostile? No one had considered this possibility, that their first encounter with alien life would be a rescue mission. Get me Captain Novak, Briggs said finally, and wake up the crew of the Ironclad. The Ironclad was humanity's first true starship. It had been built in secret using technology that the public didn't know existed. It was fast, strong, and armed with weapons that could crack a small moon. Its crew was the best humanity had to offer. Soldiers, scientists, and engineers who had trained for years. Captain Daniel Novak received the call in his quarters. He was a tall man with calm eyes and steady hands. He had commanded ships in Earth's oceans and in orbit around the moon. But this mission would take him farther than any human had ever gone. He gathered his crew. Marcus Cole, his weapons officer, a man who never missed a shot. Dr. Hannah Webb, the ship's science specialist, whose curiosity was matched only by her brilliance. Sergeant Victor Ruiz, the chief engineer, who could fix anything with enough time and determination. Within hours, the Ironclad launched into the void. As the ship accelerated toward the source of the signal, no one in the crew spoke. They all understood the weight of this moment. They were about to make first contact with alien life. They were about to discover that humanity was not alone in the universe. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, a crystalline alien commander clung to life, hoping against hope that someone had heard his call. The Ironclad dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered a graveyard. Captain Daniel Novak stood on the bridge and stared at the destruction before him. Pieces of broken ships floated through the void like leaves in a dark wind. Scorch marks and blast holes covered every surface. Whatever battle had happened here, it had been brutal and one-sided. I'm reading one large vessel at the center Dr. Hannah Webb reported from her station heavy damage to all systems. Hull breaches on multiple decks, but Captain, I'm picking up life signs. Novik nodded slowly. How many? 17, maybe. Fewer. The readings are weak. Marcus. Call checked his weapons panel. The tactical officer's jaw was tight with tension. Sir, I'm also detecting 3 other ships nearby. They're powered down, hiding in the debris field. Their weapon signatures match the damage on the main vessel. The attackers, Novik said, looks like they're waiting for the survivors to die. Cole replied, then they'll move in to collect whatever they want. Novik felt anger rise in his chest. He had seen pirates and criminals on Earth. He had fought them many times, but the cruelty of leaving wounded people to die in the cold of space was something darker. These attackers were predators of the worst kind. Take us in, he ordered. Full speed. Let them know we're here. The ironclad's engines roared to life. The ship shot forward through the debris field, making no attempt to hide. Novik wanted the attackers to see him coming. He wanted them to understand that things had changed. As the ironclad approached the damaged vessel, Cole's console lit up with warnings. The 3 ships are powering up. They're moving to intercept. Open a channel, Novik said. The view screen flickered and a face appeared. It was covered in dark scales with eyes like a snake and teeth like needles. The creature wore armor decorated with symbols that might have been military ranks or marks of kills. Unknown vessel, the creature hissed. You are interfering with Dominion operations. Leave now or you will share the fate of these weaklings. Novik studied the alien face. He saw arrogance there, cruelty, the confidence of a predator that had never met anything stronger than itself. I'm Captain Daniel Novik of the Earth vessel Ironclad, he said calmly. Those people you attacked sent a distress signal. We here to help them. Stand down and leave this area or we will make you leave. Krath commander laughed. The sound was wet and ugly. Earth, the death world. You are far from home, little creature. And you are alone. I am. The craft ships opened fire. What happened next would be studied by military experts across the galaxy for centuries. The ironclad moved with impossible speed, dodging energy blasts that should have been unavoidable. Its armor designed to withstand the harsh conditions of Earth's most extreme environments shrugged off hits that would have destroyed lesser vessels. And then the ironclad fired back. The ship's rail guns were simple weapons by human standards. They used electromagnetic force to launch metal projectiles at tremendous speeds. No explosives, no energy beams, just pure kinetic force. The first shot hit the lead craft ship and went straight through it, in and out, leaving a hole the size of a small building. The vessel broke apart in silence. The second and third shots were equally devastating. Within 30 seconds, all 3 craft ships were debris. Cole looked up from his console with wide eyes. Targets eliminated, sir. Good, Novik said. Now let's go save those people on board the Eternal Harmony. Commander Zithos had watched the impossible battle through a cracked viewscreen. He could not believe what he had seen. One ship had destroyed 3 craft warships like they were toys, and now that ship was approaching his vessel. He tried to feel hope. He wanted to believe that rescue had arrived, but as the alien ship drew closer, fear began to overtake him. This vessel came from Earth. These were Deathworlders. What if they were worse than the craft? The airlock opened with a hiss, and the humans entered. Zithos had seen images of humans before, captured by long-range observation drones, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. They were tall and solid, their bodies thick with muscle. They moved with a predator's grace, every step controlled and purposeful. Their eyes scanned the room, constantly tracking every movement, every shadow, and they radiated heat. Zithos could feel it from across the room, a warmth that seemed impossible for biological creatures. These beings burned like small stars. Dr. Hannah Webb approached him first. She moved slowly, her hands open and visible. When she spoke, her voice was surprisingly gentle. Easy there, we're here to help. I'm a doctor, can you understand me? Zios managed to activate his translation device. Yes, I understand. Webb knelt beside him and examined his injuries. The Vexi body was strange to her, crystalline structures instead of flesh and bone, but she adapted quickly, using her scanner to identify the damage and applying emergency treatments that she invented. On the spot, this one has severe fractures in the lower limbs. She called to her team, I need support. Materials, anything rigid. Sergeant Victor Ruiz appeared beside her, carrying metal rods salvaged from the ship's wreckage. Will these work? Perfect. Webb began constructing a splint, her hands working with speed and precision. Meanwhile, Marcus Cole secured the rest of the vessel. He moved through the damaged corridors with his weapon ready, checking every room for survivors or threats. He found 7 more wounded Veloxi and carried them one by one to the central area where Webb had set up her emergency medical station. Captain Novak remained with Zios. The human captain sat on the floor beside the alien commander, putting himself at eye level. You're safe now, Novak said. Those attackers won't bother you again. Zios stared at this creature from the death world. Everything he had been taught about humans told him to be afraid. They were monsters. They were dangerous beyond measure. They could kill without effort and survive conditions that would destroy any civilized species. But this human had crossed the stars to answer a stranger's cry for help. He had risked his life and his crew to save people he had never met, and now he sat on the floor of a broken ship, speaking softly to an alien he had no reason to care about. Why? Zithos asked. Why did you come? Novak seemed surprised by the question. He thought about it for a moment, his face thoughtful. Because you needed help, he said finally. That's what we do. When someone's in trouble, we try to help them. It's just who we are. Zithos felt something change inside him. All his life he had believed that the universe was divided into the strong and the weak, the hunters and the hunted. He had believed that power meant cruelty, that strength meant domination. But these humans showed him something different. They were strong, perhaps the strongest beings in the galaxy, and they used that strength to protect others. As Webb finished treating the last of the wounded, as Cole reported that the ship was secure, as Novak helped Zios to his feet, the Veloxi commander realized something important. The galaxy had been wrong about humans. They were not monsters, they were guardians, and nothing would ever be the same again. The news spread across the galaxy like fire in dry grass. A death world species had made contact. They had saved a conquered vessel. They had destroyed a craft war squadron with a single ship. And now they wanted to speak with the assembly on 1,000 different worlds. Billions of beings watched their information screens with a mixture of fear and fascination. The humans were coming, the monsters from Earth were leaving their deadly planet and entering civilized space. The emergency session of the Galactic Concord Assembly was held on the neutral station called Summit of Stars. It was a massive structure built in the empty space between star systems, designed to be equally inconvenient for all species to reach. The assembly chamber itself was enormous, a crystalline dome filled with floating platforms where delegates could observe and speak. Every species in the Concord sent representatives. The delicate vey, their bodies catching the light like living diamonds. The ghastling Mori contained in special pressure suits. The insectoid cricks, the aquatic deeplings, the plant-like verdani, and dozens of others. They came to witness history, though many secretly hoped they would witness humanity's rejection. The craft sent representatives too. Grand Admiral Crix himself made the journey, surrounded by warriors in black armor. He had lost 3 ships to the humans and he wanted revenge. He planned to argue that the Deathworlders were too dangerous to allow in civilized space. He would demand their quarantine, their containment, or their destruction. When the human delegation arrived, the chamber fell silent. Admiral Kevin Briggs led the team. He was dressed in a simple uniform, dark blue with silver markings. Behind him walked Captain Daniel Novick, Hannah Webb, and Lieutenant Commander Grace Palmer, who had been promoted after her discovery of the original distress signal. The humans wore no environmental suits. They breathed the station's standard atmosphere, a mixture of gases that would have killed most species within minutes without any visible discomfort. Their steps were heavy, their bodies dense with the muscle required to survive Earth's crushing gravity. Several delegates fainted at the sight. Others retreated to the far edges of their platforms. The fear in the room was almost visible, but humans did not seem threatening. They moved slowly, kept their hands visible, and spoke quietly among themselves. When they reached the central speaking platform, Admiral Briggs bowed respectfully to the assembly. "Thank you for allowing us to address you," he said. His translator converted his words into the common tongue. "We know that our presence here is unexpected. We understand that many of you are afraid. We hope that today we can begin to change that." Grand Admiral Crix rose from his platform. His scales gleamed under the lights and his voice dripped with contempt. "The Dominion of Krath demands that these creatures be removed from civilized space immediately. They are predators from a death world. They have already attacked and destroyed our vessels. Without provocation, they are a threat to every peaceful species in the galaxy." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many delegates seemed to agree with the craft commander. The fear of humanity ran deep, but then another voice spoke. "I would like to address the assembly." Commander Zios rose from his platform. His crystalline body had been repaired, though faint cracks still showed where the damage had been worst. He moved carefully, his limbs still weak from his injuries, but his voice was strong. "I have served the Concord for 50 years. I have always believed in peace, in diplomacy, in the gentle resolution of conflicts. I have feared violence my entire life." He paused, looking across the sea of faces. 3 weeks ago, my Ship was attacked by craft slavers. My crew was killed. I was left to die in the void. I activated my distress beacon, without hope, knowing that no help would arrive in time. The chamber was perfectly silent, but help did arrive. Human ship came, they fought the craft and destroyed them. They boarded my vessel and saved my life. They treated my wounds with kindness and skill, and when I asked them why they had come, their captain gave me a simple answer. Zithos turned to look at the human delegation. He said, because you needed help. That's what we do. The silence stretched on. Delegates looked at each other uncertain. I have seen what humans are, Zyos continued. Yes, they are strong. Yes, they come from a world that would kill most of us in seconds. Yes, they can be frightening to look upon, but they are not monsters. He pointed at 6, the craft attack innocent ships and sell living beings as slaves. They spread fear and pain wherever they go. They have terrorized this galaxy for centuries while the conquered did nothing. He pointed at the human delegation. The humans heard a stranger's cry for help and crossed the stars to answer it. They risked their lives to save beings they had never met. They asked for nothing in return, and when I looked into their captain's eyes, I saw something I never expected to find. I saw kindness. Grace Palmer stepped forward. She had spent the journey to summit of stars, learning the Conquered's common tongue, a task that should have taken years. When she spoke, her pronunciation was perfect. We did not come here to conquer, she said. We did not come here to threaten or intimidate. We came because we have always dreamed of meeting others who share the stars with us. We have looked up at the night sky for thousands of years and wondered if we were alone. Now we know the answer. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. We know that you are afraid of us. We understand why our world is harsh, and it has made us strong. But strength does not have to mean cruelty. Power does not have to mean domination. We believe in using our abilities to help others, not to harm them. Admiral Briggs nodded. We not asking for much, just a chance to prove ourselves. Let us join your Conquered as provisional members. Let us show you who we really are. Grand Admiral Crix slammed his fist against his platform. This is madness. You cannot allow these creatures into our space. They will destroy everything we have built. Zithos faced him calmly. The craft have destroyed enough already. Perhaps it is time for new builders. The vote was called. One by one, the species of the Galactic Conquered registered their decisions. The Veloxy voted yes. Marathi voted yes. The Crix, after long deliberation, voted yes. The craft voted no. Of course, so did their allies. But when the final count was complete, the result was clear. Humanity had been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Conquered. As the assembly session ended, Grace Palmer found herself standing beside Commander Zyos. The crystalline alien looked at her with eyes that held no fear, only curiosity. Your people are remarkable, he said. I never imagined that beams from a Deathworld could be so gentle. Grace smiled. We're an LT Unk and GT, not always gentle. But we try to be. That's what matters. Right, that we try, Zyos considered. This, I suppose it is. Across the chamber, Admiral Briggs shook hands with delegates who had overcome their fear long enough to approach him. Captain Novak discussed trade agreements with curious Marafi merchants, Dr. Webb exchanged medical knowledge with Veloxy. Healers, for the first time in 3,000 years, humanity was part of the galactic community, but watching from his platform, Grand Admiral Crix made a silent promise. The Deathworlders had won this battle, but the war was far from over. He would see them destroyed. No matter the cost. The peace lasted 47 days. For those 47 days, humanity worked hard to prove itself worthy of the Conquered's trust. Human engineers helped repair damaged stations. Human doctors shared medical techniques that saved thousands of lives. Human traders opened fair markets that benefited species who had been cheated for centuries. The ironclad patrolled the trade routes near Earth, and for the first time in living memory, those routes were safe. Pirate attacks dropped to almost nothing. Slavers avoided the area entirely. Word spread that the Deathworlders protected travelers, and soon ships from dozens of species were requesting permission to pass through human space. On Earth, the people celebrated their new place in the galaxy. Children learned the names of alien species in school. Scientists studied conquered technology with eager curiosity. Diplomats traveled to distant worlds and returned with stories that seemed like dreams, but not everyone was celebrating. Grand Admiral Crix stood before the War Council of the Dominion of Craft. Around him sat the 12 greatest commanders of the Slaver Empire, each one a veteran of 100 brutal campaigns. They had built their power on fear and violence. They had grown rich, selling living beings to the highest bidder, and they saw humanity as a threat to everything they had built. The Deathworlders must be destroyed, Crix said. His voice was cold and certain. As long as they exist, our empire is in danger. Their ideas of protection and kindness are spreading. Slave species are beginning to hope. Some are even beginning to resist. Commander Draxus, the oldest member of the council, spoke carefully. The humans defeated 3 of our warships with a single vessel. They are formidable opponents. One ship, Crix replied. We have 500. We will gather our entire fleet and strike Earth directly. Without their home world, the humans will be nothing. The council debated for hours, but in the end they agreed. The Craft Dominion would go to war. On Summit of Stars, Ambassador Zyos received the news from his intelligence sources. His crystalline hands trembled as he read the report. 500 craft warships were assembling in the outer reaches of their space. Their target was clear, Earth. He contacted Admiral Briggs immediately. The human commander listened to the report with a calm expression, but Zyos could see something fierce burning in his eyes. How long until they're ready to attack? Briggs asked. Perhaps 10 days, Zythos replied. Maybe less. They are moving faster than we expected. Briggs nodded slowly. And what is the Conquered doing about this? Zythos lowered his gaze. The Conquered is debating. Many species want to help you, but they have no military ships. Others are afraid that involvement will bring craft attacks to their own worlds, and some, I'm sorry to say, secretly hope that the craft will solve the human problem for them. So we're on our own. I'm afraid so. Briggs was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Zyos feel both hopeful and afraid. Then we'll have to solve this ourselves. On Earth, the emergency was declared. Within the hour, factories that had been building civilian goods switched to Military production, training programs that were supposed to take months were compressed into weeks. Every ship that could fly was pressed into service. Ironclad was no longer alone. Humanity had been building more ships in secret, preparing for a day that they hoped would never come. 12 warships were already complete and crewed. Another 30 were in various stages of construction. Engineers worked around the clock, pushing themselves beyond exhaustion, racing against the approaching storm. Captain Daniel Novak gathered his senior officers in the Ironclad's conference room. Grace Palmer was there now, serving as the fleet's communication coordinator. Marcus Cole had been promoted to tactical commander, responsible for coordinating all combat operations. Dr. Hannah Webb had organized every medical team in the fleet. Sergeant Victor Ruiz led an army of engineers, keeping the ships running. Here's the situation, Novak said, pointing at the tactical display. 500 craft warships. We have 37 ships that are fully combat ready, another 20 that can fly and shoot but aren't finished yet. 60 ships against 500, Cole said quietly. Better odds than I expected, Novak replied. I thought we'd have less time. The Krara are overconfident. They've never faced a real enemy before. They're used to attacking defenseless frayers and weak planets. They have no idea what they're walking into. Neither do we, Webb pointed out. We've never fought a fleet action before. All our training has been simulation. Then we learn fast, Novak said. That's what humans do. We adapt, we overcome. We don't give up. He looked around the room at his officers. These people have become his family over the past months. They had trained together, bled together, dreamed together, and now they would fight together. I won't lie to you, he said, this is going to be hard. We might not all make it home, but if we don't stop the Krath here, they won't stop at Earth. They'll enslave every species they can find. They'll spread their cruelty across the galaxy, and everyone who hoped that things could be different, everyone who believed that strength could mean protection instead of domination, will lose hope forever. He stood up straight, his shoulders back. We're humanity's first line of defense. And more than that, we're the galaxy's first line of defense. Those people out there, the Veloxi and the Maradi and all the others, they're counting on us, even if they don't know it yet. So we're going to fight, we're going to win, and we're going to show the universe what Earth's children are made of. The officers stood and saluted. There was no hesitation in their eyes, only determination. 3 days later, the human fleet launched from Earth orbit. 37 completed warships and 20 partially finished vessels formed a line of steel and fire against the stars. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, but it looked tiny against the darkness of space. On the bridge of the Ironclad, Novak watched Earth grow smaller in the rear displays. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in endless patterns. His home, his world. He would protect it or he would die trying. Set course for the outer solar system, he ordered. We're going to meet them at the edge. We'll make them fight for every inch of our space. Engines roared and the fleet accelerated into the void behind them. Billions of humans looked up at the sky and hoped. Ahead of them, 500 ships of war waited for their chance to end the Deathworlder threat forever. The storm was coming. The Krath Armada arrived at the edge of the solar system like a wave of death. 500 warships dropped out of faster than light travel in perfect formation. Their hulls were painted black, decorated with the symbols of conquered worlds. Their weapons ports glowed with gathered energy. Behind them came support vessels, carrying supplies, repair equipment, and empty slave transports waiting to be filled with captured humans. Grand Admiral Crick stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was the largest ship in the craft fleet, bristling with weapons that had broken a dozen worlds. He looked at the tactical display and smiled at what he saw. 37 human ships plus some incomplete vessels that barely deserve the name. Pathetic defense for a pathetic species. Open a channel, he ordered. I want them to see my face when I demand their surrender. The view screen flickered and Captain Daniel Novak appeared. He was sitting calmly in his command chair, surrounded by his crew. He did not look afraid. Human Commander Crick said, "You are outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender your fleet and your planet, and I will allow some of your species to live. Resist, and I will kill every man, woman, and child on your world." Novak was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "You made a mistake coming here." Prix laughed. "Mistake? I have 500 ships. You have 37. 37 ships crewed by humans," Novak replied. "You have no idea what that means. Enlighten me." Novak leaned forward slightly. "We come from a death world. From the moment we're born, we fight to survive. Our planet tries to kill us with storms, earthquakes, diseases, and predators. We keep going. We adapt, we overcome. We have been warriors since before we could write our names." He smiled, and there was something fierce in it. "You've conquered weak species who didn't know how to fight back, but we're not weak. And we definitely know how to fight." Crick snarled, "Then die fighting." The transmission cut off and the battle began. The Kratz ship surged forward in a massive wave, expecting to overwhelm the human fleet with sheer numbers. Their weapons fired in devastating volleys, filling space with energy beams and explosive projectiles. But the human ships were already moving. Grace Palmer coordinated communications across the entire fleet, her mind processing information faster than the craft tactical computers could follow. She directed ships through gaps in the enemy formation, called out targets, and maintained perfect coordination between all human vessels. Ironclad hard left. Squadron 4 cover fire. The flagship is turning. This is our chance. The human ships moved like dancers, weaving between enemy fire with impossible precision. They were smaller than most craft vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable, and their crews had trained for this moment their entire lives. Marcus Cole commanded the ironclad's weapons with deadly accuracy. Every shot found its target. Rail gun rounds punched through craft hulls like needles through cloth. Missile barges crippled enemy engines. Energy weapons sliced through armor. Target destroyed. Cole reported calmly, moving to next. On the ironclad's lower decks, Dr. Hannah Webb ran the medical bay like a general commanding an army. Wounded crew members arrived in a constant stream, and she treated them with skill and speed that seemed superhuman. "Plasma burns deck 7. Get them stable and back to their stations. We need everyone." In the engine room, Victor Ruiz performed miracles. The ironclad took hit after hit, damage that should have crippled the ship, but Ruiz kept the power flowing, rerouting systems patching breaches, refusing to let his ship die. The main gun is offline. Then use the backup and bring me more welding equipment. We're losing pressure in Section 12. The battle raged for hours. The craft had numbers, but the humans had skill, determination, and something else, something the slavers had never encountered before. They had heart. When the ironclad's primary rail gun was destroyed, Marcus Cole did not hesitate. He led a boarding party through space, landing on a damaged craft destroyer. They fought their way through the ship's corridors, hand-toned against craft warriors who should have been there, physical superiors. They weren't. Cole captured the destroyer and turned its weapons against the craft fleet. Other human boarding parties followed his example. Within an hour, 7 captured craft ships were firing on their former allies. Grand Admiral Crix watched his fleet crumble with growing horror. This was impossible. These creatures were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to break and flee. Instead, they fought harder with every passing minute. Every ship he destroyed seemed to make the others fight more forcefully. When his flagship took a direct hit from the ironclad's remaining weapons, Crix finally understood the truth. He had made a terrible mistake. Deathworlders were not prey, they were predators, and he had walked into their hunting ground. The end came suddenly. The craft fleet, designed for terrorizing the weak rather than fighting the strong, began to collapse. Ships fled in every direction, abandoning formation, abandoning each other. The Grand Armada, that had intended to enslave a world, became a scattered mess of retreating vessels. Novik could have pursued them. He could have destroyed every last ship. Part of him wanted to, but that was not who he was. Let them go, he ordered. They've had enough. The battle was over. Of the 500 craft warships, fewer than 100 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. Human losses were heavy, but survivable. 12 ships lost, thousands of wounded, hundreds of dead, but Earth was safe. When Crix's flagship drifted dead in space, its systems destroyed, the Grand Admiral sent one last transmission. What are you? He demanded, his voice broken. What kind of creatures are you? Novik looked at his exhausted crew. He looked at the wounded being treated in the corridors. He looked at the stars beyond the view screen, stars that humanity could now explore without fear. We're humans, he said simply, and this galaxy is under our protection now. In the days that followed, the news spread across civilized space. The craft dominion was broken. The slaver empire that had terrorized 100 worlds for centuries had been defeated by a single species from a death world. Species that had been slaves found the courage to revolt. Worlds that had paid tribute to the craft refused to pay any longer. The empire collapsed, not with a bang but with a whimper, as its former victims realized they no longer had to be afraid, and humanity was there to help them. Human ships patrolled the trade routes. Human doctors healed the wounded. Human teachers shared knowledge freely. Human soldiers stood guard over the weak and the vulnerable. Ambassador Zios watched all of this with wonder. He remembered the fear he had felt when he first saw humans board his damaged ship. He remembered thinking they were monsters. He had been wrong. 1 year after the battle, Zios stood on the observation deck of Summit of Stars, looking out at a galaxy transformed. Beside him stood Grace Palmer, now Admiral Palmer, one of humanity's most Respected leaders, your people have done remarkable things. Scythos said, you have changed. Everything. Grace nodded slowly. We just did what we've always done, help those who need it, protect those who can't protect themselves, try to make things a little bit better than we found them. Is that what Deathworlders do? She smiled. It's what humans do, far below them. Ships from 100 different species docked at the station. Veloxy crystal singers performed alongside human musicians. Marathi philosophers debated with human scholar, children of every species played together, laughing and learning. The galaxy had been afraid of Earth for 3,000 years. Now it was grateful. Deathworlders had risen, and they had brought hope with